you don't have to have everything figured out. You know, a lot of times we get so hung up on planning, what's your 5-year plan? And, you know, it's kind of a paradox. It's good to plan, but then you don't want to get too hung up on it. You want to be adaptable and flexible.
Everyone you meet every single day is fighting a battle you may know nothing about. We're all in the process of overcoming. I'm Justin Wren, and my story has been heard by millions of people through my book, my TED Talk, podcast interviews, TV shows, professional fighting, and my foundation, Fight for the Forgotten. I believe we are all overcomers if we choose to overcome. We all have the option. I've been given the opportunity to overcome childhood trauma, sexual abuse, immense bullying, depression, suicidal ideation, substance use disorder, and I am a 2-time suicide survivor. We are here to have conversations with some of the greatest minds of our time. Get ready to be inspired and to receive the tools and game plan to win this fight called life. Thank you for being here, for showing up for yourself. You, me, we have overcome 100% of our darkest days. I'm not done yet, and neither are you. This is your invitation to overcome. All right, Mills, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really, really excited.
Yeah, well, I've done a little bit of research, and so correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but I'm really excited because your passion is about inspiring people, inspiring others. And you've had, is it 15 years experience as an educator, as a teacher?
Yes, I was in education for 15 years.
Wow.
That's correct.
That's awesome, man. And you've helped build programs, or at least helped 2 different at-risk youth groups. Is that right?
That is correct. We had the Power Scholars Academy, which was associated with the Y when I was living in San Antonio. It targeted at-risk youth, and it was a great program, so I was a part of that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's definitely something I have a passion for.
Right. Mm-hmm. And you help maybe with Army veterans in mental health, or at least a program with that?
Yeah, well, that was my job in the military.
Okay.
I served 5 years in the Army as a mental health specialist.
Well,
and
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it's essentially being a counselor. And so that really, you know, that's where I discovered that I prefer helping people as opposed to, you know, because I had some opportunities to work in retail and business and that sort of thing. And that just didn't really resonate with me. But when I was able to sit down and, you know, listen to people and hopefully give them some insight to put them on the right path, that's where I'm like, okay, this is more of what I want to do.
Yeah. Well, I guess that leads into you discovering your purpose, and now you inspire others to find theirs.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What was the difference in those moments? Like, what did you feel? Was it something just like a deep feeling in your heart, or was it like, I don't know, was it something definable that you felt that was different in those instances that led you to your purpose?
I think, you know, being a mental health specialist, it just was something that it just felt more natural to me. It felt more intuitive to be, because I feel like I'm a, you know, naturally observant person, and I feel like I listen well. And so it just aligned more with my personality characteristics, and it just felt comfortable.
Yeah. It was your calling, or you were born for this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And then maybe your oldest daughter, am I correct on that? That she was born with autism, and so you're a parent of someone with special needs, and with that comes a lot of challenges that everyday people, or that don't have that experience, like, you just might not know. There's like behind the scenes type things that happen.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you know, so that's all part of how I got to where I'm at today.
Yeah.
And
well, that's what I'm excited to hear about, is your story. Really diving into that. And I just want to give a little bit of background to the listeners on who you are, what you've done, and I'd love to hear how that began. And you're from, if people can't pick up on the accent a little bit, but that's from the south of Louisiana, right?
yes.
Yeah, I got family down there, grew up going to New Orleans and Baton Rouge every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, and so I picked up on it right away. And what part of Louisiana was it?
I'm from Ville Platte, Louisiana, which is about 40 miles outside of Lafayette. You know, a lot of times people are familiar with Lafayette, but if you're not familiar with Lafayette, Lafayette is 50 miles west down I-10 of Baton Rouge.
Right.
And 2 hours west of New Orleans.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for you to be a mental health specialist, does that mean, because this show is called Overcome, and basically we're always in the process of overcoming some of life's biggest or smallest or just some challenge in life. And we like to say that you've overcome 100% of your darkest days. Like if you got breath in your lungs, a beating heart in your chest, like we have overcome 100% of our darkest days. And there'll be more, but like now we get to shine our light and our love, share our love with the world. And so I'm excited you're here. Thank you again for being here. And I'd love to get into some of your stories. So take it away.
Okay. Well, I grew up, well, I can't say I grew up in Ville Platte. I was born in Ville Platte, Louisiana. My parents, my dad was he was in the military, so I had the opportunity to travel a lot. And honestly, I would say the first 10, 11 years of my life were great. I mean, had a great childhood, had the chance to travel around the country, travel overseas, live overseas.
Wow.
I was the only child. And
Me as well.
Yeah. And well, I'm sure people are like, oh, you had it made, you know, as an only child. But, you know, there's a trade-off.
There is.
That, you know.
Yeah, you sometimes you feel lonely.
Yeah,
Sometimes
you feel lonely. And, you know, especially with me, you know, once, I'm not going to jump to that right now. So
sure.
I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But yeah, so the first 10 years, 11 years, it was great. You know, money was not an issue in my family. My parents weren't rich, but, you know, they were okay, you know, because again, my dad had a career. My mom was a teacher. And so, you know, they managed money well and, you know, we could go shopping, do whatever. Well, you know, life kicked in. My parents started having some problems and they got divorced. And so me and my mom moved back to Ville Platte, Louisiana. And that was a real culture shock for me. Of course, I was like, man, what the hell is going on, you know, when my parents decided to split, because I really didn't see it coming, you know, and then it was just like, oh, this drama and everything. And so, you know, I just had to, you know, adapt and, you know, you're just like, okay, you know, we're moving. And so again, I moved from being on military post all the time where everything was just real structured and nice looking and everything to Ville Platte, which is, if you look it up, it's the second poorest town in the country.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was just a big difference, you know, and I just had to adjust, and it was just me and my mom. And so I'll touch back on being the only child.
Right.
Like, yeah, you know, I didn't have to fight for food in the house or anything like that. You know, my mom focused on me, but that also meant that I didn't have siblings to, you know, help out with the chores and stuff.
Right.
So it's like, hey, grass needs to get cut, car needs to be washed. Go do it.
Right.
So, you know, so people out there, I'm telling you, you know, us only kids, we're not spoiled because we don't have other people to pass off things.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, and so then what's that like going from maybe to your either self-confidence or maybe more than self-confidence, it'd be like security as a child, having, you know, both your parents there and not needing or wanting for anything, like your needs are met. Mm-hmm. To then moving to the second poorest town in America and to feel the weight of that. Almost maybe you felt some sense, being a male, you might have felt a sense of responsibility to be the man of the household at an early age. Maybe not, but I'm just wondering if you can describe what were you feeling at that young age, like security-wise or just what were the struggles you had in your mind?
It was just such a different environment because, you know, when you go into an environment where the poverty level is so high, it just brings a whole lot of issues. And the thing was, my mom, she had a job. She was a teacher. And so we weren't, in fact, they're looking at us like, man, y'all are good.
Right.
Y'all are almost rich. And it was so weird because, nobody, wherever else we lived, looked at us like we were the ones that were well off. And so, there was, some shade, being thrown around and having to deal with that a lot. And, for me, that was the more troubling thing. My mom did a great job of making sure that things were taken care of. She provided me a great environment, home environment. She made sure there's food on the table, bills were paid. It was good. She did a great job with that. So security wise, I felt like I didn't feel insecure at all.
You being an educator for 15 years, did you personally, and I see already like a kind of this thing that comes together where now you're working with at-risk youth, and maybe you were surrounded by that at an early age once you guys moved back home. But also as a teacher, I think now more than ever, like bullying is such an issue because of cyberbullying, all this stuff. And when we're in school, that wasn't the case. But did you ever deal with bullying? You said shade being thrown, but were you bullied at school?
Oh, yeah. Because, you stick out like a sore thumb in a small town like that. And so, yeah, they knew like, oh, you're the new kid in town because they don't get a whole bunch of new kids.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you dealt with people or kids that were, jealous, and I'm not trying to act like I'm all that or anything or was all that, but yeah, they just, the little girls, they may like you because you're the new kid in town. And so some of the boys are like, who's this guy? And, they want to, how it goes, they just want to, like you can't come on their territory like that. And so, yeah, I did deal with bullying when I moved back home. And my mom was very protective of me about that. And so she squashed it, honestly. And so yeah, that was one challenge I had moving back home, was dealing with that.
Where do you see in your life you finding purpose in the challenges that you faced? Meaning like your purpose now, helping people. Mm-hmm. Where does that come from? Any of your personal story of like, I dealt with this, so I want to help others either not deal with it or, well, I guess for instance, with you help educate so many people in your speeches and your talks about the issues relating around special needs with your daughter. Mm-hmm. And so do you see any other places in your life, like from either an early age or fast forwarding in your story, to where you're able to help inspire people from your personal story or challenges?
Oh, definitely. Like you said, my daughter, that's a big one right there. And one of the things I do like to share with people is, we talk about people finding their passion, finding your purpose. And especially young people, unfortunately, it tends to get narrowed down to entertainment and sports. And a lot of times our gifts are, for the majority of people, are outside of those areas.
Right.
And so myself, I always struggled with understanding, like, what is it that I really want to do in life? And that's one of the things I share with audiences is that, it might not come to you for a long time. It didn't come to me for a long time. People would ask me, like, what do you want to do? And I remember being a teacher, having a conversation with a fellow teacher, and he was like, Mills, what is it that you like? What is it that you really love? Like, what's your passion? And I really couldn't answer the question at the time. I really couldn't. I enjoyed being a teacher, but honestly, it was something that I didn't see myself doing, for the rest of my life. And I'll even take it back further than that. I remember being in college with my roommate, and I told him that I can't see myself being in a job or a career for 20 something years, and so that was always, maybe it's just part of the Generation X in me or something, but I was just like, man, that just, the idea of being committed to a career, for such a long time, for, at that time, 40 years, being in my 20s and stuff, that just does not seem cool at all, So I kind of feel like my mentality was probably a little bit ahead of its time, because I know that's really embraced nowadays. But, when I was coming up, that was, for my mom, that's scary. Like, what do you mean you don't want to, be in a career? You need to find something to do, for a long time so you could get a retirement check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This podcast is brought to you by Onnit.com. Onnit.com/overcome. Use the code OVERCOME to save yourself 10% on, I'm holding in my hands, the Alpha Brain Focus Shot. It's in this cool container. Amy's got the website pulled up for you guys watching on YouTube.
Did you drink your Focus Shot this morning?
Absolutely.
I thought you did. I did too.
Yeah. How do you like it?
Oh my God, I feel so good.
I always feel
because it's early right now on a Monday.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah. This is one of the earliest podcasts we've done.
Well, this is early for you. Early for you.
Well, to go on the show, yeah, for sure. And it promotes focus and energy, supports a positive mood state, helps manage mental stress. And for me, I truly feel like it helps me get in the flow state faster, stay there longer. Whether I'm going into sparring, I had one before I went to sparring yesterday, and I had a 4.5 hour training session because they were stacked. So I went from 12 to 1:30 and then straight over to the gym from 2 to 4:30, 4:40. Came home tired last night, but I was focused the entire time.
I feel like it's very reliable about how I'm going to feel. The more I've used it, the more doing this show, really, the more I'm able to know that when I drink it, I'm going to be on point. My brain's going to be functioning really well. I feel generally good. And that's been so nice to be able to know that it is not going to suddenly make me jittery or suddenly make me feel nauseous or whatever it is.
Yeah, well, that for me is important because some of the products with caffeine, which just has some caffeine, but it's like plant-based and it's healthy and it's a low dose.
It's not jittery bad.
It's not jittery at all. And sometimes I'll have, one of those energy drinks or something, and then I'm over-caffeinated, overstimulated, and then I feel like I can't think as good.
That's not good.
Because it's bothering me.
Yeah.
And all the Alpha Brain line is super reliable. The capsules, my favorites, one of my favorites are the Instant, then the Black Label, and my all-time favorite is what we're talking about now, the Alpha Brain Focus Shots. They're incredibly good tasting. The tropical flavor, they also have peach, I believe, but mine's the tropical because it's passion fruit. And
it delivers consistently. And sometimes I'll take one and I'll split it between two smoothies when I make it for us in the morning. I'll just throw a little bit in each and just adds a little something to like our protein powder and the fruit and whatever else we've got in there.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Onnit, for supporting me, my comeback to fighting, Fight for the Forgotten, and this podcast. They make it possible. So please support our sponsors, who honestly I think have the best supplement line in the world. And our favorite products, Alpha Brain or Total Human, get the best in one packet, a morning support and a night support. Thank you for being here with Overcome with Justin Wren and Onnit.com.
Be sure to use that code.
Use the code Overcome. Yep. Save yourself some money. How old were you whenever you kind of felt like things start to click, like, oh, I can do this, and like speaking?
I mean, that just happened recently. I've been a speaker.
What's your age again? I forgot. Sorry about that.
Yeah, what is it? I want to know.
I'm 49.
49,
okay. Because I was listening to you, and I just, what you were just saying resonates with me so hard, because I'm 50, and Gen X too, and, I felt the same way, and I think that's so beneficial to tell people that you may not know right now. And that's okay, because it'll make sense later. And so we're just later bloomers.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
okay.
So, yeah. I'll be honest, probably over the...
You look great, by the way. I never would have guessed 49.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would say over the past 7 to 10 years, it's, you get into your 40s and... you start to look at life a little bit differently, and it's like, yeah, what is my purpose? What is it that I want to do long term? Because no, I didn't want to continue to be a teacher. And so that's a whole nother part of my life right there where things really started to shift, and they started to shift more because of disappointments. And so, for example, I was in teaching, and I was okay with it. It was probably the one job where I was like, it varies so much year by year. You meet new kids, and maybe you can switch positions. So it was like it's okay, but you're also capped by what you can do and the amount of money you can make.
Right.
So I can remember sitting in an audience in 2012. As a teacher, you have a lot of people come in and talk to you for professional development, things like that. And so our principal was hyping up getting this one guy to come in and talk to us for professional development. She's like, man, we got to get this guy to come on campus. And that was before summer had let out. And so we come back from the new school year, and she's like, guess what? We're going to have such and such come and speak to us. And I'm like, okay, you're just like, whatever. As a teacher, you're not really too focused on that.
Yeah.
Because, again, that's all, professional development, that's something that's just a part of the beast,
Right.
And so, I should say nature of the beast. And so, yeah, the guy comes on campus, and I guess he had gotten a deal to speak to all the middle schools in the district, to all the teachers that taught middle school. He's going to visit each campus. And honestly, it was so anticlimactic, and it's funny because one of the teachers sitting next to me, she was like, Mills, they paid that man all that money to come and talk to us. They could have got one of us to go up there. And I was like, I definitely agreed with her. I'm like, heck yeah, I could have went up there and talked. And and I know you're probably thinking like, man, that's probably where he got the idea to speak. But no, I mean, at the time, I was not interested in speaking at all. That was not even on my radar. But it probably did plant a little seed that took a few years and a lot of fertilizer to take root.
Right.
And because I was more so focused on climbing the ladder in the education field. So, I got my principal certificate and everything. And so I started going to interviews and stuff. And it was always like, you're not the right fit. You're not the person for this. Or, it's always, you interview good, but, you just, we're going in a different direction. And that went on for a few years. And basically from about 2013 to about 2015 or so. I think my last interview was probably in 2016. And, I was like the runner-up candidate a couple of times. And it got to the point where it was in 2016. I interviewed for a middle school, and it was probably the most rigorous interview I went through. And, it was actually like two parts to it. And so they had me even shadow for a day. And, the kids were excited, like, oh, you're going to be our new assistant principal. And, they were really, excited about it. And so I'm trying to think of all the details. So, yeah. So everything looked great. And so the principal, he was out the day that I had to do the shadowing, and I also had to do a town hall with students in the AVID program. And so I'm sitting in front of them. They're all dressed up in ties and formal clothes.
That's
and
cute.
They get to interview me. It was a middle school, and and the teacher afterwards, like, man, the kids really liked you and everything, and your staff likes you. And so, yeah, the principal was out for that, though. But he calls me the next week, and he basically says the same thing. And he's like, I think I'm going to recommend you for assistant principal. And I asked him, I'm like, well, financially, what are we looking at? And he's like, well, what do you have in mind? And so I threw out a number, and it was educated, it was something that I'd researched.
Right.
Because, all this stuff is public knowledge as far as what an administrator makes at that particular campus and everything. And he's like, I'll get back with you, but he's like, I'm going to recommend you. So he calls like 20 minutes later, and he was like, no, we're going in a different direction.
Wow.
And I'm like, huh? Like, why? And like, is it over the money? Like, that's ridiculous. I'm like, I quoted a figure that is that the average of what your administrators on that campus makes. And so that right there was really a turning point. Like, boy, maybe this administration thing is not what I'm supposed to be doing, because to get offered a job and then have it taken away in 20 minutes because of money, to me was like, man, what is God, what is the universe trying to tell me right now? And, I wasn't really hurt by it, but it was just like, makes you think.
Makes you think, and you said you've learned a lot from disappointments.
Yeah, and that was
so that's got to be a disappointment where you've gone through all the training, all the effort. You have all the credentials, the experience, and then to be denied not just once or twice, but over a period of 2 or 3 years.
How does that fit into you have a book titled Success is a Process. So how did that fit into your reframing or redefining success?
Well, because I know there are some people that be like, well, you shouldn't give up, or you shouldn't, you should have kept pressing on, which I did, but I didn't put as much energy into it. But it basically, I wanted to find success, and I continued to believe in myself, even though it felt like other people weren't believing in me because they weren't giving me the opportunity to work,
right.
to get promoted. And so a lot of times in life, I know it's so cliche, you can't quit, but I don't feel like it was necessarily quitting, because I wasn't giving up on the idea that I could be successful at something. It was more a change in direction.
Yeah, it's a pivot. It's pivoting and changing and growing.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. I agree with you. I think coming from a background of a competitor, I was a wrestler and a professional fighter. Mm-hmm. A lot of times you think I'm never going to quit. You can't make me quit. And I'm a fighter who's never tapped out, right? And so that's something I would pride myself on, almost have an ego about. But I think that I've had to, like what Amy said, reframe, and like what you're saying, redefine. And being able to say, like, this wasn't quitting, this is a pivot. Just like in fighting, you got to find the right angle, change the game plan up a little bit, take the information that's coming in, and then adjust and change so that you can grow and become the person that you want to be, or find the right fit. Like you said, the universe was trying to tell you something.
Yeah, and the thing was like some of the messages I got, in my mind from God and the universe was, you need to take more control of your destiny. And so, yeah, that's when I started thinking about, entrepreneurship and like, what could I do, And at first it's just like, I want to make a little extra money. And yeah, I eventually want to leave teaching, but how is that going to happen? And that's a whole nother message. Like, you don't have to have everything figured out. A lot of times we get so hung up on planning. What's your 5-year plan? And, it's kind of a paradox. It's good to plan, but then you don't want to get too hung up on it. You want to be adaptable.
Yeah.
And flexible.
Right.
And so.
Well, I think some people get stuck so much on planning that they never get started.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's another thing I love to talk about. You got to take action, because action is your biggest teacher. So. Yeah,
That's good.
Yeah,
when you say that again.
Yeah, I was like, let me write that down.
Yeah.
Action is your biggest teacher.
Yeah, because you're going to learn more from that than sitting there reading a book and stuff, because you'll figure it out. Yeah. Like, you'll learn what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so if it doesn't work, then you're like, okay, well, next time I'm going to try this and see how that goes. And I already know what doesn't work. And so yeah, you know, all those disappointments. So I started dabbling in doing some stuff online, like some arbitrage stuff. I went to a seminar. That's what I'm saying. I really started to change because I wasn't even too much into motivational stuff, honestly.
Personal development,
personal,
right?
Yeah, I wasn't too, I mean, I liked it, but I wasn't deep into it. But about 2015 or so, you know, I was like, you know, I wanted to see a difference in my life. And, you know, you start to see that life is short. And, you know, I had a lot of people that came and gone in my life. And it's like, man, you know, you got to do what you got to do. And so I went to this Get Motivated seminar. And of course, all they're doing is upselling things, you know, upselling trainings and stuff. But they were talking about arbitrage. And so, you know, Amazon and stuff like that. So I started doing some dabbling in that. I started like buying stuff for cheap on eBay, you know, maybe.
What's arbitrage?
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Well, it's basically just selling online. And so.
Is that like what Gary Vee does? He does a lot of, like, he'll buy something and then resell it on eBay or whatever.
Yeah, that's basically it. So, for example, you know, my ex-wife at the time, she had, well, ex-wife, my wife at the time, but now she's my ex-wife. She had bought some supplements from someone. And they're just sitting in the house. And I'm like, well, I'm going to just try selling it on eBay. And people were buying it. I'm like, oh, wow, okay. And then so I started looking at it a little bit more, just other things that we weren't using around the house, and it was selling. And so I'm like, okay, what's the next step in this? Well, I started looking more into things like, could I wholesale, you know, buy stuff wholesale? So, you know, and that's basically arbitrage.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I bought like T-shirts and stuff. Like people on eBay are selling like bags of T-shirts, you know, for $50. And so I'm like, well, heck, if there's like 30 T-shirts in there or whatever, 20 T-shirts, then yeah, I'll buy it for $50 and sell it, you know, all together for $200, you know, maybe $10 a T-shirt or something like that. And so I got into that, and then I was like, well, you know, what's something that I can buy that's cool and sell at a, you know, good price? And I thought, bow ties, you know? And so I was looking on eBay. You can buy stuff from China. And so I buy bow ties, you know, for 50 cents a piece from China, and then sell them for $10 or so on Amazon. And so great idea in theory. However, you know, there's a lot of competition on Amazon. And so you're not really making a lot of money, you know, to sustain you. And so, you know, that was one thing I kind of dabbled in. And then I was also looking at the motivational personal development stuff, getting more into it. It was really vibing with me. And I thought about that. I'm like, hey, you know, maybe I don't have a problem being in front of people speaking, you know, and some people get really confused with that because I'm naturally an introvert. But I have never had problems getting in front of people speaking. And I'm like,
I'm the reverse of that. That's interesting. I'm an extrovert, but I get really nervous whenever I get in front of a group and speak. But I do speaking as well. And every time I do it, and I feel like the benefit of it for me, and hopefully for what I get to share for others and get the feedback and stuff. And then that helps the next time, not as nervous. But it's really interesting. So you got your start in speaking, and but being introverted, you went up there and you just crushed it. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think it just has to do with growing up and everything, because I was in the church a lot growing up. And so, you know, they'll be like, hey, you know, we need a volunteer or something, or voluntold. And so
voluntold. I've never heard of that. Yeah. That's cute. Yeah. So, well, how'd you get your start speaking? And then how did you start to relate it or bring in like the really important topics of, for instance, being able to advocate for parents and children with special needs, you know, parents of children with special needs, but also for advocating for the children with special needs.
How old is your daughter?
Yeah.
She's 24.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's going to be 25 in November. It's funny because I just posted a picture yesterday on my Facebook, and I got old kids now. One 13, one 24, and somebody was like, wow, India's 24? And I'm like,
her name's India?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. India. That's a great name. Mm-hmm. And then how early on was she diagnosed? Because, I mean, I know that sometimes people aren't diagnosed until they're in their teens or maybe even in their 20s. But other times it's more moderate to severe to where they're diagnosed early on, like, a couple years old. Yeah.
Well, she was diagnosed, let's see, I was in the Army. It was 2000. So in the year 2000. So she was about 2.5. When she was around the age of 2, we noticed some regression in some of her, development. And so once I was stationed at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and we were taking her to the pediatrician and everything, and we're like, she's not talking, and, she's wanting to stay up all night and everything. And so I don't know. I can remember, Y2K passed and everything. The world didn't shut down or anything. Little did we know the world would shut down 20 years later. But I was working on the psych ward. I was a mental health specialist. And we would take turns using the computer because we didn't have internet at home and stuff like that. And it's funny because I never really paid attention to autism, but it just was in my mind, like, what is this autism thing? Maybe, my daughter could possibly be experiencing that. And so I typed in autism and I started looking at the symptoms and stuff, especially in kids. And I'm like, oh, man, it's like my heart kind of dropped. Like, gosh, this might be what's going on with her. And of course, I'm like, man, let me see, what can you do for this? Can it be cured? Can it, medication? Yeah. And, it's like, no, it's no cure for it. You can only try to treat some of the symptoms of it. And I was like, oh, geez, I hope this is not what she has. And we end up having to go to a specialist at the University of Missouri, and they confirmed that she had autism. And it's, her case, yeah, she has limited ability to communicate. She doesn't really talk. She understands well. She talks, even 1 to 2 word sentences. She understands fairly well. She's a sweet kid. We've had, a lot of ups and downs with it. And it definitely changes the trajectory of parenting. And because, the normal trajectory is, hey, you have kids, and they're going to go off on their own one day. And when you have a kid with a severe disability, they might not be able to live totally independent. And so that's always a concern. And then it just takes more, everything, parenting is already challenging, right, for just a kid that has, the normal development. But then when you have a kid with a disability, you're going to more appointments, you're going to more stuff at school, you're concerned about little things like even just going to the gym, There are times where, it's like, gosh, I would go to the gym at this time, but, her mom's not home. And so we got to wait till mom gets home. Then I can go to the gym because there's nobody here, I can't leave my kid by themselves. And, so it's little things like that, people like I think you were saying earlier that they overlook or don't realize.
Yeah. You don't really realize it until you experience it. And then it's all new and you're learning, and until you find someone that maybe has gone through it themselves, or you are blazing, your ex-wife and India, this is your lived experience. And so you're blazing a new trail and you're learning as you go, and you're seeing the doctors and all this other stuff. But there's not really a great playbook out there, that's been developed, and you're not taught it how to go through this. So you're making your own path. You guys are like pioneers with this, with India. And So anyways, I'm grateful for you and how you use your platform and are so willing and open to share. And I'm just grateful. I've had some people that are really near and dear to my heart. I just saw a young man named Raiden, who just turned 15 or is about to turn 15 in October in Oklahoma. And he's a young man that was really heavily bullied. He was born with autism, born deaf in his right ear, and has childhood diabetes. And he was beat up at the school urinal, and everyone just filmed it and posted on social media. The next day, he was beat up at the school bus stop and was given a concussion. And I was with him the next day. And so we've been mentoring him now for over 2 years. And we have a bullying and suicide prevention program in schools, and really grateful for that. But I mean, I literally love Raiden. And he is one of the most compassionate, big-hearted kids. But also there's challenges that come with it. Whenever we first met, he didn't like to be hugged, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm a big hugger. I hugged you right whenever I saw you. And so over the last 2 years, he's gotten into jujitsu. And so he's constantly being hugged, almost like a struggle snuggle is what we call it in jiu-jitsu. And so now when I see him, he's able to give me big hugs and things like that. And so anyways, I'm grateful, and I'm also thankful that you can be a parent who has stepped up for India, but also able to step up for other parents or people that just don't understand. Because I know there's been times, whether it's times I've volunteered at Special Olympics or other things like that, where you just don't know until you're around that they might be treated differently, or looked at differently, or not included in certain things. And then there's other times that they are absolutely welcomed and loved, but just to be able to see some of those things or hear some of those things it opens people's spectrum to like really understanding and having compassion, and to step up and be involved and get involved in ways that maybe this is their purpose. They're hearing this podcast for the first time and hearing about autism, and now it's like, well, how could I help? Or maybe they're a parent of a child. Maybe they're going to go to Google, hear your story, and be like, oh, wow, maybe my child has this, and we can start helping now. Did you have something?
Oh, I was just going to kind of echo one thing that you said too. As a parent, I have 2 daughters, and I just have so much respect for what that's like, because I haven't experienced it, but man, it's a road for sure. And I don't want to label it a certain type of road, because it's just your road, right? Mm-hmm. But I just wondered, what are some of the top lessons that you have learned from having your daughter?
Well, you definitely learn a lesson in patience, and also understanding what you can do within your own abilities, defining success. So, for example, success for my daughter India is going to look different than success for my youngest daughter, because they have varying abilities. But, India, she, you have to celebrate her wins.
Yeah.
Her wins are going to look different than what it looks like for, a kid, like I said, like my daughter, her sister, who's developing, normally. And so
how would you define success? Maybe for you personally, and then what's a moment of like celebrating India's success?
Well, even like just this past weekend, I had my kids this past weekend, and I was just looking at India, and she just the way she was interacting with us, and her demeanor, and just the fact that because like I said, she's just like you were mentioning the young man, that he didn't like to be, hugged and stuff. Well, India's never had that problem, but, she's had problems with, tantrums and that sort of thing. And, she's just really growing a lot lately, just in the way of, just being more flexible about things, and just being, I don't know, it's hard to put into words, but it was it was just really cool, this weekend just to see how, she's growing. And
that's great.
She's like a woman growing into a woman in her own unique way.
Yeah.
It's just some things that really were different, like I can just see over the past few months where she's just going in a different direction, and it's just growth for her. And so I was just really happy with her and for her and everything.
I see the smile on your face, and that's really great to see as a proud Papa Bear.
Yeah.
And I think there's something in that though, where, I think so many times comparison is like the thief of joy. Mm-hmm. And I know that a lot of people will, maybe me or me too, where you get caught like comparing maybe your second quarter to someone else's like fourth quarter, or your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 30. And growth doesn't look the same. We're all unique individuals. And so being able to celebrate, whether it's your own or someone else's growth, whatever that growth is, whatever speed it is, whatever that looks like, and being able to celebrate the simple things too for yourself and for others, because it might not be, I'm thinking about with Raiden, the young man I know, some things might seem simple in comparison to maybe another child's development, but for him, like that simple thing was a big thing. For instance, going around and being in an environment that has a lot of loud noises and a lot of things going on, it was overwhelming. But I remember we went to main event, and there was, bowling and laser tag and video games and all this stuff, everything crashing. And maybe a couple of years ago, that would have been a whole lot. And there was a moment where it was kind of a lot, but he was able to work through it. And just seeing that was really cool, was really special. And I remember we got to take him out to LA, and he got to start scenes on movies or a TV show, and go to the LA Rams game. And so it was a lot. It packed in Disneyland, and it was just a really special moment, because basically the world, or a lot of people responded saying, "Hey, we saw what happened to you. Now we want to combat that and like love you." Mm-hmm. And we took him to the ocean for the first time. He's from Oklahoma. He lived 20 minutes down the street from me in Oklahoma City before I moved here. And it was his first time seeing the ocean, right? And the first time he saw it, we were with Navy SEALs flying over it in a helicopter. But then we got to go and learn surfing together, and these incredible men that were world champions, world-class surfers, they had an initiative for children with autism to find healing in the water, in the ocean, and to learn a skill. And he was so excited to go to the ocean and go surfing. But then when we got there, and he didn't see it from overhead, he saw how wide it was. This isn't an Oklahoma pond or lake. Like it's an ocean. And a lot of people can have fear when they see the ocean. And so he did not want to get in the water. But those guys were so skilled and had so much experience with kids with autism that might have fear just like him, that they were able to say, "Hey, there's no pressure to get in the water. Why don't we just sit down and have a conversation first?" Once they got to know each other, everything else, once he saw other people going surfing, then all of a sudden he was like, "Oh wait, I want to do that." It went from fear of, no, I'm out, I can't do it at all, to then just sitting there and being able to relax and have a conversation, see other kids doing it. Then he was able to go out there and actually get up on the board. And it was just a moment to really celebrate with them. And so, I'm just grateful for you. And I'm grateful for India and you being able to share her story. And
it sounds like it gives you like just more of a perspective of cherishing moments.
Oh, yeah.
And considering the successes just in those moments.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
Even in your own life, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. And like I said, it changes the trajectory of parenting. And, honestly, yeah, you deal with a lot inside because, for me, I wanted to be a dad and I was excited about it. And sometimes you feel robbed, especially like, dang, she's not going to be able to do certain things, and it's like, it's not fair,
Yeah. How did you work through that personally?
Well, I loved her. I love
Sure.
her, and I'm like, I'll be the best dad I can be under these circumstances. I'll, give her the best experiences I can, considering the circumstances.
I can just imagine a lot of people would carry a resentment, and you seem to not have that.
Yeah, I mean, because what is that going to do? It's not going to change the situation, and you got to. For me, it's like you got to deal with. Okay, what are we going to do? What's the here and now of this? And so it's just like doing the best I can with it. Taking her to the park and letting her run around and trying to make childhood as normal as possible, considering the circumstances, knowing that the path is going to be different than what it would be for most parents. And so, yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of resentment inside, but, again, it was just like, I'm going to love her. I'm going to be the best dad I can be. And, we'll try to do things, as much as we can. And that was just the attitude, I had about it.
Fightfortheforgotten.org. You can go check out Fight for the Forgotten, the foundation that I started. It is my passion project. It is something that I love so much because of the people we get to help. We get to help the Pygmy tribe who adopted me in help themselves. We say opportunity is greater than charity. Charity can be great, but opportunity is just always better. That's why we've drilled something like 80 water wells already, providing over 30,000 people clean water. We've started sustainable farms, bought back over 3,000 acres of land for the people who originally owned it, put it in their name. We built 32 homes, and now we're about to start a health center, a school, and a marketplace. They're going to have a maternity ward, a pediatrics unit, and a dental suite. You can join the Fight for the Forgotten Fight Club at fightfortheforgotten.org. We would love, love, love to invite you on this journey to join this fight arm in arm with us. Our Fight Club, it's a monthly giving club. You can give $5 or more a month, and that empowers us to empower people. Thank you for being on this journey with us. I invite you to come along for the ride. It's been absolutely epic, putting love and compassion in action and fighting for people. Fightfortheforgotten.org. Join our Fight Club. Can we go back to early on whenever you were on Google or making that search and you realized, or maybe she got the diagnosis? How big of a, was that something just instantly, hey, love is going to, I'm stepping up as dad and love's going to get us through? Or were there these moments of like self-doubt? Can I do this? How will I do it? And then when did it start to, like maybe certain challenges early on, you learned, okay, we can get through this, and this is how we handle this. And now it's become a little bit more of a, just almost muscle memory where it's like, okay, that used to be a challenge, but now it's something that we just deal with and get through, and it's not so hard.
I guess first off, I wouldn't consider it getting that diagnosis and saying stepping up. It's just being dad.
Yes, that's so good.
That's how I look at it. It's like, I'm going to continue to be dad.
Yeah,
and
that's awesome.
That's what a parent should do.
Yeah.
You're there for your kids, and that's what that's what you signed up for when you decided to have them, or even if you didn't decide to have them.
Right.
And so it's just like, okay, well, we're going to try to do what we can, and what can we do about this? And so, she did some therapies and everything. And so, just the type of person I am, I'm very solution oriented. And so I was always looking at like, okay, this is what, this is supposed to help. So let's try this. And, talking to doctors and everything. And so, that was pretty much, my approach to, when I found out. Yeah, like I said, it was a little, heart-wrenching, and plus you really don't know what to expect, because the fact that with autism, it's a spectrum. So, and kids develop at different pace, at a different pace. So at the time, it could have been, it's possible that, hey, she's struggling to speak right now, but she could be speaking in 2 years.
Right.
So, it's like, okay, we're going to do what we can. We're going to try to put her in a position to be successful. And I think that's, as a parent, as a mentor, as a coach or whatever, that's what we all do. We're trying to put people, give them the tools, put them in a position to succeed. And that's, for me as a dad, that was my mission. That was my job. And so, we're going to, if they want therapy, if they feel like putting her in ABA therapy was going to help her, then we'll do it. And that's what we did. And so, whatever resources we could access, we tried to take advantage of.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's like an overarching theme in your life and in your work about acceptance. And I mean, your last book was called You Can Win Being You, you know? And like, do you really push people to accept themselves, accept their situation in your speaking and in your messaging?
Yeah, definitely. Accept it, but do something about it. You are who you are. We're going to have situations that, we feel are unfair. Nobody said that life is fair. We've all heard that. And, you have to do something about it. But you can achieve things in life, but you have to put in the work. Because, I'm going to kind of take it in a different direction. You may have a disability, you may be, you may have your gender, you may have your race, and those things, let's just be real. People are discriminated based on those things. Yeah. And so, however, there's people that are very successful with, being a certain race, being a certain gender, having a certain orientation. And, that's something that I really share with people. It's like, it's more about what personal characteristics do you have inside of you that will help you move down the path that you feel is your purpose and your dream. And so,
I think it's great you do that, because there's people that are successful that are that have one or all of those things, right? And I think being able to take inspiration from those people. I'm really excited about a guest that we're going to have on later this month, and his name's Zion Clark, and he's awesome. He is he was a champion wrestler, but he was born and lost, or he didn't have both his legs. And he can do these box jumps like crazy, and he's super successful. There's a Netflix documentary on him, and he's just one of the most inspiring human beings. And him and our first guest of this show ever, Nick Santanastasso, he was born with one arm, one finger, and no legs. And they both say it in kind of similar ways, but the biggest disability is a poor mindset, is a bad mindset, right? Yeah. And so, what does that mean to you, the title of that book? Why were you inspired to write? What's the name one more time?
You Can Win Being You.
Yeah, You Can Win Being You.
Yeah, well, it's funny, when I do my presentations, I don't write a script for my presentations or anything. I have points I like to make and certain things I like to talk about, but I'm not, again, pre-writing my speech or anything like that. Yeah. And so there was one point in a presentation where I'm talking about imposter syndrome and I'm like, yeah, you can win being you. And, I'm thinking about it on the flight back home. I'm like, I like that. Yeah. I like that I said that. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make a revision to my book. And I'm going to title it that, because I really like what that means, and I feel like it represents myself, because, I suffered a lot of disappointments. I was rejected along the way a lot because people were like, you're not good enough. You're not the right fit. when I was looking for promotions in the education field, and now, I went from being a classroom teacher where I was just like, man, I wasn't certain what my purpose is, what the long-term plan was, or whatever else, to having spoken coast to coast. And, it's something to really think about, like, wow, life has really changed, and it's like, yeah, I'm winning, I'm winning, yeah, things were down for a few years. And, it's funny because I didn't even realize how maybe down I might have been, but before I came here, I was looking at a Facebook memory, and it essentially said, I'm going back to the gym. I hadn't been to the gym in a year, and this was in 2014. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. I hadn't been to the gym in a whole year, at that time, and I couldn't even fathom that, but it just goes to show where my life was at that time, because, I've always tried to incorporate staying in shape and that sort of thing in my life. And to say I was out of the gym for a whole year, like, what was going on with me? I mean, I know what was going on at the time, but to say, like, man, I wasn't even doing that. And it just goes to show, like, how, the ups and downs of life, and how, with that being said, I still continue to believe that there is something greater out there, even though I might have been at it was a period of life that I was struggling with. I still believe that, that I had purpose. Might not have known exactly what my purpose was, but I felt like I wanted success, and I was going to find a way somehow to achieve it.
That's really good. I think even just saying that one title, "You Can Win Being You," I think there's so many people,
simple and so
and profound.
Yeah,
it's
that's
simple
what's
and
great
profound
about it.
Because so many people are trying to win being somebody that they're not. We're trying to win being somebody that's someone else and not being themselves. And especially probably in today's age with TikTok and all the things, the viral things, they got successful doing that, so I'm going to try to do exactly that in just a different way.
And it's just like, you being an athlete, a lot of times you get, especially a lot of young guys, they're trying to mimic so-and-so. And with that being said, they don't really develop themselves.
Their own style
and skills.
In fighting, people, I think it can be very beneficial to replicate somebody's technique that you're seeing them win by. But then whenever you go and you're trying to not just get a new technique and put a new tool in your tool belt, but you're also trying to walk like them and talk like them and everything else, it's like, man, that's not longevity of like really becoming and developing and becoming your own. So that's powerful. That's profound. I'm glad and grateful that you're able to go from coast to coast and share this message. That's very important with kids today.
And it's just like, again, like I told you, I grew up in the second poorest town in the country, and, I'm a black man, and to be able to go coast to coast, I've been to New York, I've been to San Francisco, Seattle, Minneapolis. I'm going to be going to Chicago. It's like, wow, I grew up in the second poorest town, and to have these opportunities, it's just like, man, you can win. You can win. And then, I have a daughter that has a severe disability. I've been through a divorce. Now I got a awesome partner, fiance.
Congratulations.
And it's like, man, when that "you can win being you" really is, it means something to me. It means something to me.
That's awesome. Congratulations. Amy and I are both have been divorced. And I was just telling her the other day, and it's not a knock on my ex-wife, but I was saying, I'm so glad I'm divorced, because I found you the happiest relationship that I've ever had. Someone that inspires me, someone that challenges me, somebody that, my mom called me yesterday, and I think it was yesterday, right? And we were on the couch, and I just had a moment just telling my mom, and we go, Mom, guess what? I am so in love. I am so in love, and I'm so grateful. And my mom's like, oh, I'm so happy for y'all. But it's so good that sometimes you have to go through these challenges to find who you really are and be able to win being you. And so how big of a victory is that for you, that, or not just that, but at one point you had to say, I'm pushing all the chips in, or I'm betting on myself, and I'm leaving this. I'm leaving behind the education, or I'm betting on me. And you started doing it, and you started getting outside your comfort zone, or pursuing that, right? Where you're like, I mean, because you could stay comfortable in education and just gone through another 10 years of applying, and maybe on the 10th or 12th year, you get, or the 5th year, right? You get that principal position, and you'd be an administrator now. But instead, you change the trajectory of your life by taking a leap of faith.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that do that. You know, that, because, people would tell me, like, yeah, I applied to 50 jobs, or I went on 50 interviews, and I'm like, man, that's BS. To me, I'm like, I don't want that job that bad. It's not that rewarding, or I don't know. I think a little bit higher of myself than to say I need to go to 50 interviews or 100 interviews. And so, I had to bet on myself. I got into the speaking in 2017, and, I was speaking a lot on special education at the time, because, I did some research, and they're like, you want to present yourself in a unique way as an expert. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I've been a special ed teacher. Plus, I got a daughter that's special needs. And so that's a pretty unique view that I can share with people. And plus, I want to clear up some misconceptions about special education and disabilities and that sort of thing. And so, I was speaking at places, using that experience. And, so that's basically how I used, that's where I like to say something, turn your trial into a treasure. And so, that trial of having a daughter with a disability has became a treasure, a gift. And so I was able to share with people my experiences and everything. And then so I started getting a little bit more, opportunities. And of course, the more you do, the more options become available. And so I transitioned more from speaking on special education to speaking on motivation, because I was able to be like, hey, I spoke here on special education. I'm okay, I'm legit. You have that social proof, like they say. And so, I started speaking more on motivation, speaking to college audiences and everything. And so, July 2019, I told my principal, like, hey, I'm out. I'm not coming back for the next school year. Like you said, put all the chips on the table and kind of figure out some options I may have if it doesn't quite work out. But I figured, well, heck, if I'm getting speaking engagements now doing this part-time, well, if I could devote more time to it, then, I should be able to make a living doing this. And so it looked pretty good. I was getting speaking engagements and everything, and the pandemic hit a few months later.
That's true.
And but I still had opportunities virtually.
Oh, that's great.
So I didn't really miss a beat.
In those moments, were you? And then I want to get your question too. But in the moment you put all the chips on you, and you told the principal you were leaving, was that fearful, or was it freeing, or was it a little bit of
freeing?
Both? Okay.
Yeah, definitely 90% freeing, because, I've been evolving. And so it was great to get to a place like, I love what I'm doing, and I'm going to go all in with it.
Would you have any tips or special advice for, or just any tidbits where maybe someone that's listening is feeling maybe they feel trapped, or just that they're not supposed to be doing what they're doing now. Maybe it's a 9 to 5 that they're in a cubicle and they're just not happy. And they've been doing it and been on the grind and been hoping for a way out. Or maybe they think they have that way out. They found it, but they just haven't pulled the trigger on it. They haven't put all the chips in on them. What kind of advice could you give them, or just share from your own experience?
Well, from my own experience, boy, it's kind of tough because, I know the type of person I am in my thought process. And, for somebody like that, their thoughts are probably, the biggest thing people worry about is, hey, can I take care of myself? Can I take care of my kids? And for me, I say I have a daughter that had severe autism. And so that's something, that's a life lesson right there. Yeah. That, you don't have control over everything.
Well, because on the flip side, someone listening to that might have different thoughts than you. Mm-hmm. They might be even more concerned. I have a daughter with autism. I can't bet on myself. I have to stay in this to take care of her. And so for you to have, you saying the life lesson is, no, I'm not in control of everything. I need to do this. That is that difference in thought process.
Yeah. I mean, for me, see, my experiences, life is short. My dad had an aneurysm in 95, I believe. But I mean, he's alive. But, that changed his life.
Yeah.
Honestly. My mom, let me go in a chronological order. I had, of course, you have family members that pass away. And the biggest one that really hit me hard was in 2007, because I'm an only child. But my cousin, Travis, he passed away unexpectedly. And, he is married, had 3 kids. Wow. Good dude. He was like my brother. And, I always pictured us growing old and talking about, yeah, you remember growing up, and like, wow, that was just so shocking to me. That was like really, really, really just hit hard. And so that happened. Then 2 years later, my mom had a stroke, and she's been bedridden ever since then, paralyzed. And so, yeah. And then, of course, I've seen other relatives, they passed away because they got older or health reasons or whatever. And so all those things, on top of my daughter, it's just like you start to really see like, boy, life, boy, you got to enjoy it when you can and take advantage of certain things. And that's where I was at on July 21st, 2019. That's where I grown to, was like, and even before that, with the getting into speaking and getting into entrepreneurship, it's like, you know what, man, I want to be able to travel. I want to go coast to coast and see these places that I haven't been to before. And it's just all of that. And so that's what I would encourage anyone, that's listening, that is maybe hesitant. Hey, understand that, what, maybe chances are you're probably very blessed right now to be able to have your the ability to do certain things. And, you have to, the window of opportunity doesn't stay open forever. And so, and then we've seen that with the pandemic and everything. People that we expected to be here for a long time are not here. And so, yeah, you definitely have to take advantage of those opportunities. And, I have something I like to talk about. I like to use a lot of acronyms and things in my talks. And one of the things I've come up with is that success is in 3D. Okay. And so success boils down to discipline. Got to do the right things consistently. That's what discipline means to me. You have to make the right decisions, choices. Can't make bad choices and expect good things to happen. And then lastly, and I think that's where I was really at, you got to be desperate. You got to want whatever you want really, really, really bad, you know? And so for me, I wanted success really bad. I wanted to be able to determine my own destiny. And so, you have to really, really want it to where you're going to be like, you know what, I'm going to do whatever it takes. whatever it takes, within reason to make this work.
Yeah. I really like that. There's a quote in recovery, because I've been through treatment twice and battled with addiction from some surgeries and some from upbringing things and a bunch of different things. But in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, they talk about how you must have the desperation of a drowning man. And there's a speaker, I think, named Eric Thomas, right?
Yeah,
he's like, he's talking about you got to want to succeed as much as you want to breathe. But I think it does go down to desperation, because I think most people, and this is an extreme, right? But people dealing with addiction, they never go to treatment on a winning streak. It's loss after loss after loss that got you into that place normally. I mean, there might be some people that are proactive and decide to go, but whenever you're really desperate, that's whenever you're willing to make the biggest life changes, to discipline and to make the right decisions. And because you're in that desperate place I've got to change my life or it's not going to be what I want. So I think it's awesome that you are able to use it from maybe at a higher bottom than maybe like an addict and things, but you saw this stuff going on around your life, and you wanted to provide a different life for yourself and for your daughter and everyone else that you love. And it's really, really good. Amy, did you have a question?
He answered it, really. I was going to ask him maybe a little bit more about the discipline part of it, because I know I had listened to you speak about the 3D, and I just wondered what the discipline really has looked like for you.
Well, for me, again, discipline equates to consistency. So, I feel like when you want something bad enough, like what you're just saying, you're going to start to understand, like, okay, well, in order to get it, this is what I have to do. And, whether it be improving our health, improving our financial situation, you have to be disciplined. You have to do the right things consistently. So for me, as somebody that was looking to get into speaking, I have to reach out to people consistently, and follow up with them. And, I have to do things the right way, make the right choices, and bottom line, just being desperate. Like, hey, I want it bad. I really want it bad. I want to do this. And so that drives the discipline and the decisions, the choices.
Do you think that includes cutting out other options? Like not holding on to your day job, basically?
Well, yeah, it's a calculated risk. And so, yeah, cutting out options because, again, like I mentioned earlier in the interview, I saw where being a teacher, being an educator, there's a cap to it. And to know that my ceiling is much higher, as a speaker, pretty much unlimited because, I'm the CEO of myself. And so, yeah, that definitely is how I feel about it.
That's a lot of encouragement, man, for people to bet on themselves.
And I heard a lot of people tell me that, like, man, you're betting on yourself. And it's, because I feel confident that I know, I feel like I have enough discipline, to do what I need to do.
Yeah, it sounds like if you've been in Austin since what, February? You might have heard this terminology. The lingo was, or the slang. I just realized it's kind of Austin talk or Austinese, but breaking out of the matrix. Talking about breaking out of the matrix and getting out of that. Just programming that you kind of have from growing up. You grow up, you get a job, you get the retirement and the 401k and all that stuff. But it does sound like at first, maybe, if I got it right, you kind of had it as a side hustle. You tested the waters first. Yeah. And then once you got it, you're like, oh, I can do this. So you got some experience with it. You got a taste of it. And you got the knowing that I can do this.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of trial and error also. That's why I say you learn a lot by action because, I see so many people like they're even scared to dip their toe in the water because they're afraid they're going to do the wrong thing. And I'm like, I've actually done classes on maybe starting a speaking business and that sort of thing. And I'm like, look, there's hardly anything that's fatal. You know, you could even have a bad speaking engagement. You're going to be okay. You're just going to, it's just like being an athlete. You're not going to win every game.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to have a bad game. You're going to have a bad match. Winners win consistently, but they don't win every game.
It's true.
They don't win every game. You know, we look at the Super Bowl winners.
Yeah.
They don't, I mean, there's only been one team that won the Super Bowl that was undefeated.
Wow.
And that was, 40 years ago, the Miami Dolphins. Besides that, you know, every team that wins the Super Bowl, they've lost games in that season. Every team that wins the World Series, they've lost games.
Yeah, and the NBA, right? I mean, they're not winning every game. They're winning 60, 70% of them to get to the finals.
Exactly. And so, that's how it is in life. You know, if you do the right things consistently, you should be successful.
Right. I really like that because in wrestling, there's something called mat time. But jiu-jitsu is a very similar sport. I mean, it's takedowns to a submission, but you're just bringing something up and from my perspective where wrestling is all about mat time. Get as much experience as you can, go to as many tournaments as you can, get as many matches because that's like the laboratory. That's where you're experimenting and that's where you learn and that's where you grow and you learn what works and what doesn't. And in jiu-jitsu, it's there, but for some reason, because it's not a sport that's maybe like a high school sport or a school sport, and then like you go to the NCAA or go to professional athlete for, it's different where people won't test themselves. They'll do it in the gym a lot, but there's people that are so fearful to ever get in a tournament and ever get to compete. So it's more just theory more than like they've actually developed it. So I've tried to encourage people from jiu-jitsu, get into as many competitions as you can. And yes, there's a lot of gyms that are like that, but from my own story, I lost every match, except one by 1 point in my first year of wrestling. But because I had 2 Olympic gold medalists that were my coaches, they were saying, mat time, get out there. By the time you're a senior, we'll make you a state champion. But I went out there and tested it, and there's 3 styles of wrestling. So a lot of kids that I was competing against, I started wrestling at 15, but other kids had started wrestling at 4, 5, 6 years old. I had to catch up to where they were. But I would do 3 seasons every year. I would go from folk style wrestling to freestyle wrestling to Greco-Roman wrestling. So I was doing 3 in 1 year, and they were only doing 1. And so by the time I was able to win the state championship and become an All-American and national champion because I was testing myself. I was seeing taking action. When they had 30 matches in a year, I was having 120 matches in a year because I was going out of state. I was doing everything I could. And so I had hundreds of wrestling matches in high school whenever maybe other guys had, in 4 years, maybe 100 matches. And, so I think anyways, you're just bringing that to my attention of like, wow, yeah, you learn by doing. You learn by action. Be consistent. Show up.
Yeah,
when you show up, like good things happen. Wow. Thank you for all this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got me fired up there. Well, what's one of the life lessons that what's been one of the most important things you've learned in life that maybe you could share with someone listening now? That's just really important, that's really heartfelt of like, this is something I'm really grateful I learned because I would love to learn that from you.
Wow. I mean, it's almost everything that I'm sharing with you, just the fact that, man, you have to believe in yourself. And I know that's so cliche. And people may be like, well, what if I don't have that confidence? I don't believe in myself because I've had this happen or I failed in this area. And so how do you build confidence? Well, you have to build confidence through small victories. The more you can accomplish, the more success you can experience, then you'll start to feel more confident. And, one of the things I always suggest to people is, try to change yourself physically because you have total control over that.
Yeah.
Even if you can't afford a gym membership, chances are you can afford to go take a walk for 30 minutes a day or something like that. And you're going to eventually start to see changes in yourself. And that does more for your mind than anything. And I say that because when I first started when my life started to really change, I started to look at other things. And like I said, I was desperate. I was just desperate. I wanted to live a good life. And, I saw a lot of people I loved that were near and dear to me, struggle with health and, just unexpected things coming up that they just weren't there anymore. And so it was more so. My change, my evolution was more than just like my career or whatever. So, yeah, I was looking at like, man, my mom, my parents have experienced health issues. And so I started saying, you know what, I'm going to walk, this beginning of 2017 New Year's resolution. And I wasn't overweight or anything, but I was just like, I just want to get in, better shape. I had started, I'd been going to the gym, lifting and whatever, doing a little exercise. Started walking, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to start running. And then I was like, you know what, I'm going to continue to challenge myself. I'm going to sign up for a 5K.
There you go.
And ended up signing up for a 5K and did my first one, and I came out
and
third.
At this time, you're in your mid-40s?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and so, came out third in my age group.
Third?
Yeah.
Wow, look at you. First one.
Yeah, first one. And
is awesome.
so it's like that kind of got me hooked.
There you go.
During that season, and started doing a lot of them after that. And, the confidence that I got from saying, you know what, man, I couldn't run more than a mile at first to being able to do a 10K and run 6 miles. And of course, that's a process. I didn't do that right away. But those little victories did wonders for my confidence and my ability to be resilient in building my business as a speaker.
Yeah.
Because, I understood certain things like, hey, you're going to feel this, certain kind of way one day, or it might be a little disappointing, or you might have something that's, kind of nagging you a little bit, as far as being a runner.
Yeah.
And of course, that always transfers over into life. But it also, again, it just did wonders for my confidence, and that's what really, if you're going to achieve things in life, it really all boils down to confidence.
That's really good. I think what I'm picking up from that right there is just like you were developing those muscles or the conditioning by all the road work, you're literally at the same time developing the muscle of confidence or the muscle of the conditioning for courage, betting on yourself because of those small victories, and those add up to where you're able to take the bigger leaps of faith. Yeah, that's great. Well, how can people support you and find you? And if, let's say, there's an administrator at a school that's listening and they want to book you as a speaker, what's the website? Where can they follow you on social media? And I'd love for people to know how to get one of your books.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So my website is successisaprocess.net. And you'll see yours truly on the header. And it has access to my books and everything. They're posted on my website. Links to my social media are posted on my website. My email is posted on my website. So yeah, if you go to my website, that's an easy way to get in contact or follow me or whatever else. My books are on Amazon. You Can Win Being You. You can find that on Amazon. You can find
pulled up here now.
Yeah, you can find Success is a Process, Inspiring a Mindset to Flourish as an Educator. That's on Amazon. As far as social media, I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, under Rodgers Speaks, Rodgers, then the word speaks. All right. And so, yeah, you can find me. And the only thing I'm not on is Snapchat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. I did want to ask in closing, What's been one of your most special moments, or just like an interaction you've had after, say, a speaking engagement that you were like, see, I'm doing the right thing, or I'm following my calling, or this purpose? Do you have an interaction with someone that booked you to speak, or someone in the audience that you were just like, man, like if I wasn't there, I wouldn't have heard this feedback or known that, that what I said resonated? Do you have any of those moments in Seattle or New York or anything where you're like, man, I'm really glad that I started to pursue this because this happened?
Yeah, actually, a couple of months ago, I got an email from an audience member for a virtual engagement.
Wow.
That I did.
You didn't even get to shake their hand.
Yeah, exactly. And they were like, yeah, us and that person and the director that had booked me, she's like, we do different activities, and, we were going hiking, and this was, in the Seattle area. And there's like, we were talking about some of the things you said, some of the acronyms you were throwing out there and everything. And so I was like, wow, that's super cool.
Yeah.
2 years after, and this was a virtual engagement, which, as a speaker, you sometimes like, especially initially, you're like, man, I would love to be doing this in person. So for them to have those takeaways was like, just really, really powerful. And then, the other day I did a speaking engagement in San Antonio, not really a speaking engagement, but training, professional development for a nonprofit. And one of the attendees, her husband is a coach of a really prominent team in San Antonio, football coach. And she was like, she's like, during your presentation, I was sharing all the things you were saying. She's like, this would just be so good for his team, And I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. I said, I'd love to come out and speak to him, because they've won state championships and everything. Yeah. And so, it's things, those are some of the instances right there. Yeah. And just the fact, I also had somebody come up like, yeah, what you're saying about, having your daughter's autism, and how, your youngest daughter helps out with her a lot. She's like, I've experienced the same thing. It's the same scenario. Like, her younger sister is very protective of her and just loves on her and everything. And so, yeah, I've definitely had those conversations.
Yeah, I think it's really important, because someone listening, maybe they don't know how much their personal story or the things they've been through, or the wisdom and insight and knowledge that they have, how it could really impact somebody else. And so I hope that any of the listeners hearing this will be encouraged by your story to like open up, to be vulnerable, to share your experience and your knowledge and your strength with somebody else, because people need that. We need each other.
Yeah, and that's where I came up with turn your trial into your treasure, because, we've all experienced challenges along the way, but a lot of times we can use that as a gift to somebody else, and it's a gift to us too.
Yeah.
So,
wow, that's really good. Okay, maybe lastly, I said that a minute ago, but take care. I saw that on the website, and CARE. What does that stand for?
CAR. Oh boy, you put me on the spot.
Put me on the spot. Yeah,
because it's something I recently created. So
I've got it here. Let's see, but I don't know what it is. It's like, it says leadership is about serving others. Maybe that'll prompt you. An approach to servant leadership titled "Take Care."
Well, how would you describe servant leadership?
Well, servant leadership is, understanding that, a leader is just not a boss of somebody. Like, you're there to serve the people that are there to work, and make sure that their needs are taken care of, that they enjoy what they're doing, and putting them, like I said earlier, putting them in a position to succeed. Yeah. And so that, to me, is what servant leadership really, really, really boils down to. Great leaders, great coaches, again, put people in positions to succeed. And so
I love a John Maxwell quote that says, "A good leader knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way." And just thinking of that kind of being servant leadership, like shows the way and he's actually going the way. And so he's inviting people along. Actually, Amy, could you look this up, pull this up, please? It's a leader, a boss versus leader. And there's a great picture of it. I'm wondering if you've seen it. I want you to see it, but it's boss versus leader and then image search, because I bet it will come up.
It's not John Maxwell? Or
No, it's not John Maxwell. Just boss versus leader images. And it's that second one, that yellow one. Okay. And if we could pull that up, Grant, I think it's pretty cool imagery, because it shows a boss behind him, kind of on top, almost like, snapping a whip out there, and the leader's out in front, that's basically like pulling a lot of the weight and inviting people along with them to follow. I think that's the servant leader, right? Is the one that's like in the trenches with the people he's leading, instead of he or she are leading, instead of like up on a podium, telling them what to do.
Yeah, getting your hands dirty along with them, because you're leading by example, and that tends to inspire. And so I'm trying to think of the acronym right now.
Oh, that's okay.
So, T is like being tactful, with your people. A is definitely taking accountability. Servant leaders do that. K is being knowledgeable. E is having a certain amount of enthusiasm, energy about what you're doing, because again, you lead from the front.
Right.
C is, of course, communication. A is good leaders take action. Yeah. They're not just about talking. R is being resourceful, being able to use what you have, putting people, again, in the right positions. And then E is being empathetic.
Yeah.
So
that's really good. Yeah. You got it.
Those are a lot to remember. Yeah. That's really awesome.
And people can hear it and see it come to life, whether you book Mills online virtually or in person now. So check out the website. And Mills, thank you so much for being here. I'm really grateful for you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I had a blast.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Hey, don't forget to send your Overcome stories to overcomepodcast@gmail.com. And also, rate, review, subscribe, and follow Overcome with Justin Wren.